So what I want to talk to you guys today about really quickly is lighting in Blender, and we're just going to do the basics. I'm really just going to show you two different types of light. I'm not even going to show you all of the different types of lighting, but we're just going to run over just the quick basics and how you can control the light and kind of what things look like. So if you take a look at this animation that I built really quickly, I'm just going to take the dope sheet and the curve editor and close them a little bit here. And just going to, I've got my camera right here so I can kind of see what's going on, and then I've got this. So if you kind of take a look, what you have immediately in your view is always a lamp. And a lamp is basically what we call a point light source. In other words, it radiates light in 360 degrees, basically like a bare light bulb. But even better than a bare light bulb, because a bare light bulb doesn't radiate light from its plug, right? The plug end that screws into the, okay, that would block a little bit of light. But in this, you know, it's more like the sun. It literally radiates in all directions, okay? And so if I just take a quick render here, let's make it new window. You can just kind of see really easily, I haven't done anything fancy with the textures, you can just kind of see exactly how it works, okay? That's a point light source, there it goes, and it's plain and simple. Now one of the things that we can do is let's scale up our room a little bit here, and I just want to show you what's going to happen when we scale it up. So I'm going to right click on my room, I'm just going to hit scale, I'm going to make it a lot bigger here, okay, and then we'll bring it down so that the lamp is about in the middle, and I'm going to have to bring my camera back a ton so that we can kind of see it. Now, one of the things that happens is you start to scale things up. This really has nothing to do with the lighting. So all of a sudden things just start to disappear. Notice my camera, it's gone. If I render an image, nothing. This always frustrates me, but if I click on my camera and go to my camera controls, there's something called clipping, and it says anything that's further than 100 units away from my camera just won't show up. So that annoys me. So notice I'm just going to take this, I'm going to type in 10,000 and watch it reappear in the camera view. Oh, look at that. So it is a little frustrating, but all right, so now I've got that. Let's render a new thing here, and look what happens. Whoops, I right-clicked. There we go. You'll notice that it got a lot dimmer, didn't it? Okay. And if I take that light, let's right-click on our light here. Okay, and if I take that light, I can go over here, and there's this little button right here. I can click on the lamp, and this is, again, your object data. This is specific controls that are, or controls that are specific, I should say, to that object. And right here, you'll see that there's a distance. And so if I take this distance, and let's take it down to 10, and take a look at what's going to happen when I render out another thing. You'll notice that it does even less. And I can go even further than that. Make the distance 1, and let's see what that looks like. And you can see now you've got nothing. Okay. Now here's the interesting thing that happens. If you wanted to make the light, quote unquote, more powerful, okay, you can take the energy up. So I can take the energy now and I can set it to 10, which is ridiculously bright. But if I go back and render, it still doesn't affect it. That's because the distance is still only set to 1. So one of the first things that I want you to understand about lighting in Blender is that distance and power, or the energy that's given off by the light, are two entirely different things. So let's take our distance. Let's go back to our object data. I'm going to take my energy back to 1. And let's take our distance to 50. Let's go back and render out a quick shot here. Now that looks more natural. Now I'm going to take it back down to, let's go to about 20 so that we have dark corners. So go back to my object data, take my distance down to 20, and what I'm looking for is corners that are dark. Yeah, so now the corners are dark, okay? Now let's go back and let's pump up the energy back up to 10. And notice what's going to happen. The light's going to get brighter, but the corners are still going to stay dark. Dark-ish, okay? That's an important thing about energy, is that if the distance is set really short on this object, even when you pump up the energy, it will still, you know, fall off. Let's take a look at what I've got the fall off set to. Right now, the fall off is set to what we call inverse square. Inverse square is a law of physics that's actually very near and dear to my heart because I'm a photographer, and so lighting in general is awesome. And the reason why it's near and dear to my heart is this is the principle. Think about it. Because light spreads out both horizontally and vertically, if you move a light twice as far away from your subject, okay, how much less powerful do you think it is? Yes, that would make sense, but you're wrong. It's actually a quarter as it's 4 times less powerful because it's actually spreading out in 2 dimensions. 2 times 2 is 4. So the inverse square law means it's squared 2 to the 2nd power, which is 2 times 2 equals 4. So if you move a light twice as close, it's not twice as powerful, it's 4 times as powerful. So that's important. This actually what you can do here is you can say, I'm going to make this work physically the same way that a light works in the real world with this inverse square law. So let's just keep our energy at 1, and our distance, let's set it to 50. And, oops, 50, there we go. And let's add an object really quickly here. So Shift A, I'm going to add a cube. I'm going to take this cube and move it over here, okay, and scale it up a little bit so that we can see it, okay. That looks good. And let's take our camera and move it vertically a little bit, like so. And I've actually got a target here, too. I'm going to move that down just a touch. There we go. So now let's take a look at the shadow that's being thrown by the cube as this cube is just kind of floating in mid-space here. And you can kind of see that that looks pretty good. And take a look at the, again, our distance is a little small, and the shadow here is really, really harsh. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can lift your shadows a little bit. Let's say you didn't want this to be pure black, okay? Because that is a pretty harsh shadow, isn't it? There's a couple of ways to take care of it. One way that you can take care of things is go over to your world and you can check environmental lighting or environment lighting. Now, an environment lighting at 1 is ridiculously powerful. Notice the difference. You usually would never ever want it that high. What you usually want is like 0.005, something in that neighborhood. That's a little weak. Let's make it 0.01. See what that does. Ah, okay. And you'll notice now that the shadow is a little grayer, but also my corners are a lot grayer and so on and so forth. So if I wanted to keep the corners nice and dark, let's go back and turn off our environment lighting. Go back and render that. You can see how the corners get a lot darker, and now our shadow is perfectly black. But what you can do with Blender and lighting is click on your light, go to the object data, and look here. You can control the shadows. You can say no shadow at all. So if I hit that, and then I go render, you'll notice the light falls on the objects, but the objects don't cast a shadow at all, which is kind of cool. This is really handy when you're adding what we call a fill light. Okay, let's say you've got your main light and it's behind your object. Look at how the face of the object is right here. It's really dark. So let's say we wanted to add a light here just to fill in our shadows a little bit. Well, if you have shadows turned on, it'll cast a shadow of the cube against the wall. But if you turn that off, it fills this in, but it doesn't cast a shadow. You have a lot more control that way. It's really nice. But usually you want shadows on. But what you can do, turn on ray shadows, is lighten it a little bit. So just make it a little lighter like this. And now the shadow is lighter in that corner. Even better, you can set colors to your shadows. Now, I'm not sure you would always do it. Now it's not working. Of course. Let me make sure my quality is all set up. It should be working. There it is. Now you can see it's blue. So I just needed to bump it up and make it even a little bit brighter. So now it's got a blue shadow, which is kind of cool. You can also change the color of the light that it's giving off right here. So I can make it give off a red light, okay, but I have a blue shadow. Kind of fun. All right, so there's a lot of different things that you can do. The other nice thing about lights is that you can change the kind of light that you have. Now, I like this a lot because I worked in some 3D programs years ago where if you wanted to change from, say, a point light to a spotlight, you had to delete the point light and then re-add another light in, and you'd have to put it back in the same place and so on and so forth. Well, here you don't have to do that. Here you can actually change one light to another kind of light. So I can just go here and I can hit the spotlight, and the spotlight, okay, notice, let's move this up a little bit here and over. You'll notice the spotlight also has a distance to it. So now what's interesting is, notice that the distance is this circle here. That distance is ending before, so we can switch to wireframe mode, before it reaches the floor. Okay, so let's go and let's change this back to white, just for the purposes now of what we're doing here. So, so now let's render this, and you'll see something interesting happen, is you see the light is not quite reaching the floor like you would expect. I mean, it's still casting a shadow and stuff, but it's not quite there. Whereas if I take the distance of the light here, and I increase it to, say, 100, let's re-render, you can see now the light is hitting that corner in full. But you also notice it only has the coverage based upon the cone that the light has. Okay, which you can change that angle, okay, to make it very narrow or something with down here with the spot shape. And then the blending is kind of cool. So I can make it real harsh in the center, and then it's going to fade out. So let's take a look at how that worked there. So you see it's got a brighter center, especially right here in the corner of the cube, and then it kind of fades out. Whereas if I take it and I take the blending down and then make it real small, see how that works. Now it's just got a specific point, and it's missing my cube entirely. You can kind of see that if I rotate around. So maybe I would need to kind of spin it like this a little bit. You know. Let's try that. And see, it's so narrow that you just kind of see the edge of the cube. It's not really doing anything. So now we can, let's go back and let's widen it out a little bit here. Maybe blend just a touch. There, and it starts to look more like stage lighting, a spotlight, or something like that. I mean, you can do a lot. You can do a lot with this. So let's just kind of take a look at something practical here. And the rendering is actually taking forever. So let me just actually go back to my demo files here and go down to, I'm doing this water simulation. And what I've done here is I've allowed my lamp point source to be in here. But then if you back up, outside I have a spotlight, and it's going to be streaming through the windows. And I'm working on the windows being glass and everything like that, so that they actually allow the light straight through. If I render it right now as it is, let's see. The water part's not working yet because I haven't baked the water simulation yet. But let's just try rendering this image. It's going to take a little bit here. And it's not too bad, but it's still, here we go, it's tracing, always takes a while. It's almost getting there. So anyway, what you start to do is you start to mix that interior lighting versus the exterior lighting. here's the thing. You shouldn't just put a spotlight on the outside of your room and have it shining through the window, because then what you'll do is you will have these harsh shadows and you won't be able to see anything. You need that light in the center. The other thing that's really important is as you make the rooms are going to be pretty big. I mean, remember the size of the rooms in the last demo, they're like 150, 160 units. If you want your interior light to cover that, you're going to have to adjust the distance on your light to make sure that it covers that whole thing. And it is still not rendered yet. So I think we're just going to say that's that. But that's what I want you to do with these, is you should have an interior light that's a point source. And then I want you to put a spotlight outside the room coming through your window. I'm going to do another demo on the textures, the materials for the windows, so that we know we've got light coming through them, okay, so that the light actually comes through and hits the floor and makes a nice highlight, square, rectangle on the floor, that sort of thing, okay? And that will probably be the last demo for Blender before we move into our next assignment. Any questions? No? All right, let's call that a day.